Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. For all you focused learners out there, today we are diving headfirst into the high-stakes world of industrial instrumentation. Specifically, we're going to break down exactly how engineers measure extreme industrial heat. We'll look at why old-school mechanical tools inevitably fail under intense pressure, and how harnessing some absolutely brilliant principles of thermo-electric physics literally saves the day. So grab your notes, because we're going to take these complex textbook theories and finally make them make sense.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We're hitting 1. Industrial temperature measurement. 2. Pressure spring static errors. 3. An intro to thermoelectricity. 4. The Seebeck Effect. And 5. The Peltier and Thomson effects. Let's get to it.
All right, Part 1, Industrial Temperature Measurement.
And moving right into Part 2, Pressure Spring Static Errors.
Okay, to truly appreciate this technology, we really have to understand the brutal realities of industrial processing. We're talking about environments with liquid glass or molten steel sitting at 2,000 to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. To put that into perspective, that is insanely hot. Now, a standard pressure spring thermometer uses the expansion of a liquid or gas inside a metal bulb to physically move linkages and point to a temperature. But, well, physical parts have serious physical limitations in those extreme environments. After they've been installed for a while, these thermometers suffer from calibration drift. Even worse, at those massive temperatures, the pure filling media inside the bulb, stuff like mercury or nitrogen, can actually become contaminated or, crazy enough, literally decompose. Plus, because they rely on all these gears, linkages, and bearings just to move a pointer, they suffer from mechanical friction, and that friction creates what instrumentation engineers call a dead zone. This dead zone concept brilliantly illustrates a major headache in mechanical engineering. It's exactly what it sounds like. A process change happens, say the temperature spikes or drops, but your instrument reads absolutely nothing because the mechanical parts are just stuck. For my gamers out there, think of it exactly like stick drift on a gaming controller. You know the feeling, right? You're inputting a command, but because the physical mechanical sensor inside the controller is worn out or sticking, nothing happens on screen until you push hard enough past that friction. In a pressure thermometer, the temperature has to change enough to build a massive force just to overcome that starting friction. So this brings us to a massive engineering dilemma. If mechanical linkages cause these dead zones and extreme heat literally destroys the physical filling fluids inside the thermometer, how on earth do we reliably measure 3,000 degrees without relying on moving parts? We need a completely different approach. Which brings us to Part 3, Intro to Thermoelectricity. Enter our electrical solution, the thermopyrometer. It's an absolute game changer. What we have here is the basic anatomy of a simple thermocouple circuit. Notice how elegant and minimal this setup is? You've basically got two wires made of completely different metals. Let's just call them A and B, joined together at two ends. The left-hand junction is called the measuring junction. That's the part you stick directly into the 3,000-degree molten steel. The right-hand junction is the reference junction, and that one is kept at a known, much cooler temperature. Because there are zero moving parts, there's absolutely no mechanical dead zone. But wait, how does this actually give us a temperature reading?
Let's look at Part 4, the Seebeck Effect.
This is where the physics gets incredibly cool. We're going to break down the big three thermodynamic principles that power this simple loop of wire, starting right at the foundation. So, the absolutely crucial point is this. Back in 1821, a guy named Seebeck discovered that if you have two dissimilar metals joined together, and one junction is hotter than the other, a thermal electromotive force, or EMF, is naturally generated. This invisible force acts kind of like a pump, causing an actual electrical current to flow through the circuit. Under these static conditions, the heat energy from that molten steel is being directly converted into measurable electrical energy. And the hotter the measuring junction gets compared to the reference junction, the stronger that current flows.
And finally, Part 5, Peltier and Thomson effects.
Now, Seebeck's discovery is super important, but it's really only part of the story. To truly master how this instrument behaves, we have to look at the remaining two principles that are happening at the exact same time inside this circuit. First up is the Peltier effect. This principle relates specifically to what happens right at the connection points of our two different metals. When that current flows through the circuit, heat is actually absorbed at the hot measuring junction and evolved or released at the cooler reference junction. The amount of heat being shuffled around is strictly proportional to the flow of current. It's essentially the mechanism that proves the thermocouple acts as a reversible heat engine.
Now, contrasting with what we just learned about Peltier, we have the Thomson effect, which was actually predicted by the famous Lord Kelvin, by the way.
What's really interesting here is that it doesn't rely on two different metals being joined together at all. Instead, it states that an electromotive force is generated along a single homogeneous piece of wire, simply because one end of that specific wire is hotter than the other. So as the wire travels away from the incredibly hot furnace out to the cooler factory floor, a temperature gradient exists along the wire itself, and that contributes to the overall electrical behavior of the whole system.
Okay, let's lock this in because people mix these two up on exams all the time. Let's chunk this knowledge perfectly so you don't forget it. Just remember, Peltier is all about the junction between two different metals. Thomson is all about the temperature gradient along a single uniform metal wire. Both of these effects happen concurrently inside a thermocouple, working right alongside the Seebeck effect to give us that final, perfectly readable voltage. Because we can carefully harness the Seebeck, Peltier, and Thomson effects, the thermocouple has become the rugged, highly reliable champion of industrial processing. By totally ditching those moving linkages, we eliminate dead zones entirely. We get an instrument with incredible precision of calibration, high resistance to extreme oxidation and corrosion, and a wonderfully linear relationship between the temperature and the millivolts it outputs. Usually that output is ranging from about 10 to 50 millivolts, which doesn't sound like a ton, but it is exactly what we need to get a perfect reading. It is a wonderfully elegant, pure physics solution to a really messy mechanical problem. To wrap up today's explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. We've seen how turning away from mechanical gears and embracing a reversible heat engine allowed us to reliably measure 3,000 degrees. As you move forward in your diploma studies and eventually into the field, ask yourself, where else in industrial control systems are we relying on flawed, friction-heavy mechanical parts? And what other thermodynamic principles could we harness to eliminate those mechanical errors entirely? Keep that in mind as you review your notes this week. Thanks so much for joining me on The Explainer, and keep learning.